Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V20 6-Tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Are you ready for more independence as a financial advisor? Are you ready for more growth and control over your future? The Independent Registered Investment Advisor, or RIA, model might be right for you. There are many paths to independence, and Schwab Advisor Services has helped thousands of advisors make the move with confidence. From defining your vision to successfully transitioning your clients, Schwab helps you build your roadmap to independence. To find your path, start with Schwab Advisor Services at advisorservices.schwab.com/paths today.
Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews, it's your number one source. Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 337 of Sports Card Nation. Have a great guest on the show today. A guy I kind of wanted to talk to for a while. It's my fault. We didn't get him on sooner. I talked to him at the Nationals, said, love them, come on. And then I kind of was going to interview him there and dragged my feet and all on me. But as the saying and cliche goes, right, better late than never. So he's on today's show, and a very important person to the hobby, especially if you're a fan of what Upper Deck has done, and kind of what we're still seeing today, right? He's affectionately known as the architect. I'm talking about Karvin Cheung, and he's, his big baby was Exquisite, that brand, and we're going to obviously talk about that. But he's done a lot of other things too, and sometimes I think that gets overshadowed. So we're going to talk about kind of everything he's done, chop up a little hobby in the process as well. So without further ado, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk with Karvin Cheung.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
I am genuinely excited to talk to the next gentleman that's gracing Sports Card Nation podcast. I've apologized to him before we start recording. Should have had him on sooner, but better late than never. Mr. Karvin Cheung, a.k.a. The Architect, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. That was a nice intro. I love your action intro. They're almost like a news channel, so that's interesting. Brings me back to the 90s.
Speaking of 90s, something we're both familiar with hobby-wise and even before. And that's kind of where I want to start off here, Karvin. And I know we talked before recording. We have a similar trajectory, at least to start out with, both veterans of setting up at the flea market, and from the flea market days, opening an LCS, and then on to bigger and better things, especially in your case. When you look back upon those times, the flea market days, and then eventually being an LCS owner, like kind of your thoughts on that time in your life.
Well, the one thing is that for sure it's a long journey, right? And I just feel that, man, there's so much I could change that would have made my journey even more smoother, or perhaps more successful, or maybe even just another career. But you think about it, and you're like, you know what? I wouldn't change anything. At the end of the day, when I was a little boy, and my dad used to smoke a lot, and he would go to the local convenience stores and bring back 2 packs of hockey cards, and I was like, that almost gave him my pass for him smoking, because he's giving me hockey cards. And then I started buying packs of cards, whether it's hockey, Star Wars, everything, just to have that pack opening experience. And the funny thing is that I never even chewed the gum. My parents never liked me chewing gum, and that gum tasted awful back then. I'm sure it tastes even more awful when you get it now.
Yeah.
Like, the flavor's
That's not
gone
even
within the
gum.
first
It just dissolves in the who knows what. Probably something.
right. But even back then, the flavor's gone within like 5 minutes. You gotta get another. You gotta buy another pack, or have a whole stack of gum, like a gobstopper in your mouth. And I know we're aging ourselves by saying gobstoppers or something like that, or jawbreakers. But I wouldn't change anything. I was a big fan of the hobby. I opened a lot of products back then. I opened a lot of products when I had my flea market, selling singles, wax, everything. In fact, some of my customers, like Jason Spezza, was one of my customers. If anyone who knows Jason Spezza, who's now retired,
hockey.
yeah, and his dad used to love hockey cards. And then opening my first store, that was great. And then working for a distributor, and during this whole time when I had a card store, I was like, what if the card companies did this, and what if the card companies did that? And came that opportunity when Upper Deck said, hey, we have a position. And Upper Deck was the one company that brought me back into trading cards. I used to love trading cards when I was like 8 years old, all the way till about 12. Then it was almost like shame culture. I got shamed for collecting hockey cards. Like, I go to school, bring my hockey cards, and like, are you a baby? Why are you collecting hockey cards? Why don't you just play hockey instead of collecting hockey cards? And it's almost like, okay, well, I guess I'm not collecting anymore. I got into comic books after that, and DJing, vinyl. But however, I always had a fondness for hockey cards. And later on, when Upper Deck came out with the double-sided photos, the hologram, everything about that card just looked beautiful. And I just said, man, I love hockey. I mean, I love baseball cards now, the 89 Upper Deck set. And then that's when I got into my flea market, because I managed to walk into a Sam's Club or a Walmart, end up buying like 20 boxes. I said, no, I'm going to set up at the flea market. And that started the whole trend of that journey. But then with that being said, I had a successful store and everything. And I was like, but what if you could do something to change cards, make it what I want it to be? Selfishly, I want to create cards for myself. And I was like, there came that opportunity. However, it came with a big pay reduction for me. It was close to 70% pay cut with what I was doing on my own and having my day job. And I was just like, man, is it? And I always thought to myself, man, even despite that pay cut, I gotta take a chance. It's a dream job for me to be able to create cards and have my stamp of approval or my creativity in terms of card sets. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? I always wanted to move to California. I was a fan of the Lakers before the Raptors. I was a fan of the Dodgers before the Blue Jays. That's how old I am, people, right? Yeah. And if Wayne Gretzky could move to California back in '88, 2001. Yeah. Let's give it a chance. I mean, Gretzky's not there anymore, but at least, I moved down to, and of all places, San Diego, which is one of the best cities in the U.S. And I said, you know what, let's take a chance.
It just says it's one of the best cities you could live in. And listen, you followed your passion. Money is nice, and yes, it does have to pay the bills, and we do need it. I think sometimes we as a society we sometimes overemphasize it, though. And I get it. I'm not trying to, throw it overboard. But, you followed your passion. It worked out for the best. Even before you took that leap, Karvin, were you designing cards either in your mind or on paper? Did you already sort of have that job? You just hadn't have it officially yet?
I never really designed cards per se. So even at Upper Deck or even at Panini, we have graphic designers that really do you provide a concept. More so, I was inspired by, obviously the 93 refractors came into play. And then all of a sudden, we had numbered parallels and then memorabilia cards. I was all inspired. Well, what if we did this? I walked into, I think a lot of it had to come from Pinnacle, because in hockey, Pinnacle was a big part of hockey, and you had Dufats, you had the masks, you had artist proofs, you had the mirrors, all those great inserts back in the 90s, and add on to like the platinum portraits, the team leaders for Jordan, and of course the team and Shaquille. We had all these like new ideas, new look, the essential credentials, the green gems of precious metal gems. And it's funny when I hear new people talk about this, say, "Oh, the green gems, no one wanted those, and no one wanted jambalayas, and no one wanted essential credentials." I go, "No, that's not right. They all wanted those cards. They were hard to get back then, and we all had a limited budget. So because I remember walking the National in the late '90s and early 2000, and there was a Japanese store called Red and Blue. They had the double booth. They were the only booth that had nothing for sale, and it was the display of all of their collections, right? And any single Jordan card, Kobe card I ever wanted to see was all in that showcase. They had the green PMGs, they had the red PMGs, they had every autograph of Jordan, where I opened cases of product and never hit one. I spent like probably $100,000 opening products and not ever hit a Jordan autograph, but they had one for every single set or multiples for every set. They had the first ever game jersey card, the auto game. I'm saying, man, this is like just a museum of Upper Deck, Michael Jordan and Kobe cards. So from that point on, I was just like, man, I see those, and I see the excitement that people have when they hold those cards. So obviously, when you talk about something that happened 25 or 30 years later now, 25 years later, your people still want those cards. It's all about nostalgia. Our hobby is about nostalgia. And what I always say that when a new person comes back, is a lapsed collector comes back, or someone that collected as a kid comes back, the first thing that they always buy is one of two things. The one thing they would say they want to buy is something they used to own and they got rid of it, or it got thrown away, or it was damaged, so they'll want to buy that same card they own. Or as a child, or as a kid, or as a kid collector, there was a card that really wanted, whether it's a Ken Griffey Jr. or a Michael Jordan rookie, or maybe it's an essential credential of Michael Jordan that they saw they always wanted that. Well, that's the one piece that they're always going to chase, come back when they have the money to buy it. So those are the drivers of collectors coming back into the hobby. You can tell who's a lapsed collector and who's a new collector. A lapsed collector will always want something they always wanted to have, or always.
Yeah, it's a great point and very true. I think it rings true. And for those that say, no one wanted, like you said, jambalayas or PMGs, they wanted them, but like you said, they were tough pulls. That's why. They're in demand to this day. They're in demand, obviously. They're going to cost you a little bit more today than they would have even back then. I think that's just an easy answer to say, no one wants them, or no one cares, right? It's just listen. I opened plenty of stuff too. You even talked about how much you opened it without getting one. So if they listen, if they're that easy, the demand is going to be a little bit less. That's just human. That's human nature and what have you. So, how did the whole upper deck thing come about? Did you see that there was an opening? Did they contact you? Like, how did that all transpire?
So prior to me going to work for Upper Deck, I had my store, and then I ended up working for a distributor in Canada. They're still around. I worked there for 2 years. And it was interesting because every time Upper Deck had a distributor meeting, they would entertain feedback, and I would provide my feedback. Well, why don't we, have you ever considered this? And, what if we did this, whether what cards are numbered to 1s or 10s or 25, or, what about including this kind of twist to the set and these ideas? And Upper Deck, they used to write down all the ideas and all that. And I had a kind of like we both had our differences at the distributor, and they, Upper Deck said, "Man, maybe we should give Karvin a call." So they gave me a call when I wasn't working at the time with the distributor, and they said, "Hey, would you like to come down just for a kind of an interview? It's a discovery interview." So I went down. I said, "Hey, free trip to San Diego. Can't go wrong with that. You have the world famous zoo there that I'd never been to. I went to SeaWorld as a kid, but I never had a choice of going to SeaWorld or the zoo. I chose SeaWorld, and I always wanted to go to the zoo. I said, yeah, sure, I'll fly down to Carlsbad, and they pay for the flights, pay for the hotels, and got into it. Saw the great office where Michael Jordan had the first office on the left, walking into what they call executive row. It was eye-opening experience. Like, I saw all kinds of cards, and I was like, my eyes were wide open, and just like a kid in a candy shop, right? And I was just like, man, this is awesome, man. I wish I can work here. They sat me down. They said, well, we're going to restructure our team, and we have the product development, with your knowledge of hockey, since hockey is a big partner of theirs. And we also noticed that you're very passionate about basketball. There's probably going to be a position for basketball and hockey. Why don't we, keep our don't they're not telling me, hey, for sure there's a job for you, but they wanted to bring me in just at that stage in February, saying, hey, there's potential of some structural changes to the team, so they want to bring in some new talent. And sure enough, in June, I went there for a second interview. I think May, I went there for a second interview. They said, yeah, we're finalizing our team, and there's no definite answer yet, but we'll let you know. They gave me a range of salaries and all that, and I was like, yeah, that's okay. Like I'll never say I need this or I need that, especially at that point in time. And then, a week later, they gave me an offer letter. And, kudos to Upper Deck. It was an interesting offer letter. They paid for like all my moving expenses if I needed to move my car, gave me, I believe, 2 months of rent. And, I just said, well, it just doesn't get me there. And then at the end, they gave me a signing bonus. And I was like, okay, well, and my friend said, you're going to regret not taking it. I go, yeah, I know. So I had to go. I had to at least, go for at least a year or 2 years. And then, I moved down in middle of June. I believe it was middle of June for a sales meeting, an internal sales meeting, the salespeople. And I remember, talking to my team, like the people I'm around, the product development. I said, well, how about those ideas I had? I had a whole black book full of ideas. And they're like, Karvin, I hate to say this to you. Do you really think that we're that much of a lack of brain trust here that we wouldn't come up with some of these ideas? I'm like, well, I don't know. You're asking me for my ideas. So I'm just providing the ideas. You go, yeah, we thought of like 70% of your ideas, but because of league approvals, because of cost, all these things, they don't work. Or it could be exclusives with athletes or exclusive with technology at the time. And I said, oh, great. So I had my little black book full of like probably 400 ideas. I had to cross off pretty much all of them except for like 5 and build my awareness of how to build products on 5 ideas to add in, sprinkling ideas for products. So it's interesting how I talk to people today. They're like, I don't like parallels. Well, back when I was building products, I didn't like parallels either. Like I know that parallels were needed, but there's a lot of like non-parallel inserts that I put a numbered out of 5. Unfortunately, it was in hockey, which I felt that, hockey was an area where I could have a bigger impact because they never showed up in hockey before. But yeah, I bet you some of those people don't even realize that those cards are so rare today, even 25 years later. So yeah, it was a fun time, and you find your place, and you find what you can do well, and how you can work with it. And it was a fun ride. I can't believe it's already been 15 years since I last worked for Upper Deck. So
yeah,
time flies.
And how long did it take you to learn like the nuances, like some of the like you said, the leagues, what they would allow, and kind of a quick study, and then you were off and rolling, or did you it took a little?
We had a spreadsheet that would say this is, you can do this, you can do this, you can't do this. But as time moves on, because of whether it's lawsuits or other issues, it always changes, right? So when you go back to like the early '90s and you said, oh, there's pictures of the Menendez brothers and all this. Well, when you move on, you realize that these people that have their images, like the Menendez brothers, that's an image right issue, right? If that card sold because of their images, then that's an image right issue. You're actually owed money to those celebrities or those people that have the images. Like I think one of them had some of the rappers in there, or Drake was in the photo with Justin Bieber. I mean, Drake could sue for that, saying, hey, that card's worth a lot of money because my photo's in there, or the Justin Bieber set sold well because I was in there. So those are evolving all the time. So it's interesting how people are like, oh, why don't we add Taylor Swift photos throwing out the first pitch, let's say, right? I'm like, well, you would have to pay Taylor Swift money, right? And then on top of it, Taylor Swift, usually you don't deal with them. The manufacturers typically will deal with their agents, their agents are negotiating, $50 to $100 million deals. They're not interested in doing a deal for one image unless you're willing to pay millions of dollars. And those are some of the struggles that you find out why you can't do it. I remember in 03-04 during the LeBron rookie year, I had, I think, 2 lists going. I had a celebrity list for basketball and a celebrity and a cut autograph list for basketball. So there would be people like Curtis Blow because he sang basketball. There's Jay-Z. In fact, before Topps had their deal with Jay-Z, Upper Deck had a deal with Jay-Z. I'll get into that another day, what happened there. But that contract got ripped up after a couple of months. So then that was done because of LeBron. LeBron had told us his favorite rapper was Jay-Z at the time. So those are, the list of celebrities I had just for basketball alone. I had 150 celebrities. Well, out of that 150, if you look at SP signatures, the only celebrities I got was Cheryl Miller, Reggie's sister,
Yeah.
and probably even a better player than Reggie. Had the WNBA. He talks about getting beat up by his sister and playing at home, right?
Yeah.
And then there was Cheryl Miller, who was end up being I think she was a reporter at that time, and she played in the '84 Olympics for USC. And then there was Summer Sanders, who was an Olympic gold medalist swimmer that had a show with Ahmad Rashad, I believe, in the 2000s. And then the last one was Spike Lee. Like the fact that I got Spike Lee out of all the celebrities, I was thrilled. So I could do my Reggie Miller Spike Lee auto, which is now a Grail card for many people. The funny story about that card is that Spike Lee signed it first. Reggie Miller signed it first. And then when we sent it, it's all hard signed. So we went to send it to Spike Lee. Spike Lee wrote "Go NYK" all over like Reggie Miller's photos or Go Knicks. So that's a kind of an interesting story. People are like, "Hey, this card's all inscribed." Yeah, because Spike Lee was trying to do it to kind of piss off Reggie Miller.
Everyone's familiar with the choke sign given by Spike, and so there's some history there. And
you are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
We are back.
And those are the things, the average consumer, Karvin, doesn't realize all the details and groundwork and stuff that has to go into a product release and how much stuff could have been, right, that didn't happen. Contracts that weren't signed for whatever reason, financial or power and control, and that sort of thing. So everyone thinks like, oh, I could do it, or it's easy, and and they don't realize in some cases some of these products are designed. Everything is like 2 to 3 years in advance of, obviously not a rookie class per se, but the product itself is already, some of the groundwork is done years ahead of time. And so they think it's like, oh, you need 30 days and then the product. It's not that simple. And I mean, who knows better, right, than yourself? And
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something about collectors, right? It's funny because we'll put out a football, let's say a football product, right? And hockey is different for rookies, and baseball is different for rookies. But football, they get drafted, they have rookie cards, right? And back in, you're talking about 98 to 2000s, you're talking about after being drafted, we would have photos in their collegiate uniforms, right? Or if they didn't go to the photo shoot, so the photo shoot was designed, it was actually, I believe, the first company to do the photo shoot, Upper Deck, and this is where they would present them with their actual, these are going to wear the potential number they're wearing, and they would be in the field and take action shots, so we can get action shots. And that's why back in the day they had the trampoline, you had the guys in the crowd, in the clouds throwing the football or shooting the basketball. Outside of that, all these guys would say, oh, man, I can't believe Tom Brady was wearing practice jersey, or Tom Brady was just wearing shorts, or this person's wearing shorts. And I said, well, when was that product released? Well, that was released in September. I go, okay. And I go, when do you think you can get photos? Well, you probably get them at during the preseason. I'm like, well, a lot of times they don't necessarily play in the preseason. And on top of it, if a guy plays like 4 downs, you might not even get a good image. Like you're thinking that, oh yeah, okay, well the guy's gonna hut the ball, hold back, and then pull it back like a good image for a shot or for a photo, and that's going to be approved by the leagues, by them, by everyone. And that doesn't always happen. And then on top of it, I go, well, how about in-game photos? We actually don't even care about preseason. Well, in-game, well, the first game starts after the data was released. It's going to be impossible to get. So then people are like, oh yeah, you're right. I didn't think about this exactly. So and I go, but I don't hate on people that do that. I just explain to them the process and everything. And I go, it's about 6 months to get the cards done. Sometimes we have accelerated schedules to get the cards to what the collectors want. And at the end of the day, I'll be honest, I don't even think there's a full appreciation from the collectors when it's done right, and we spend all that extra money and extra overtime and time to get it done right? And I go, so if that's the case and you don't care about that, why are we putting all that extra time and money into it? I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that we have to kind of figure out what is really important for the product and what's important for the collector. And I go, I don't expect you guys to understand the challenges we have, right? But since I do know, because I was there with you saying, man, I can't believe Upper Deck and Tops and these guys can't get their act straight. Like, those, the same ideas I probably had going on my little black book, going to Upper Deck. Like, yeah, come on, Karvin, think about it. This is your calendar. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You think it's like, oh, I can take a camera, take a picture, and it goes onto a card tomorrow, like Tops Now or something like that, or Panini Instant today, right? No, it's not. There's a process, and those photos and everything has to get approved by the leagues. The leagues have to look at all and then some people are like, well, what about the enforcers in hockey? You should have enforcer cards where they're fighting each other. I go, well, do you think the NHL would approve guys getting bloodied up by knuckles in images?
Yeah.
They go, they used to have them. I go, yeah, well, that's when you say they used to, that's it. They didn't have approvals back then, maybe, right? So there's a lot more trading cards than people even imagine. And I give kudos to anybody like customer service or people like ourselves or like you that can explain the process and people get upset with you. I'm just telling you, just do the calculations. You can figure out all the answers for yourself. You might not like your answer, but you can figure it out.
Well, there are a lot of couch, manufacturer people out there that think they have it figured out. But it's great points by you, right? There's just so much going into this. Like you mentioned, not everyone plays in preseason. Actually, very little people play because of the injury fear and depth. Some depth charts are kind of set, and so they're just worried about certain other spots. And you're dealing with not only the players, but player unions and all sorts of different tentacles that have a say or want to have a say. So I get it, but plus, when we're talking about that part of 2000s, technology's even different then. I know it doesn't seem that long ago, but on a technology scale, where it's apples and oranges. So I think sometimes the newer hobbyists, if you will, are kind of spoiled because they only know kind of what they see today, and they don't realize it wasn't always like that. And I think that's why me and you maybe appreciate some of the stuff, because we kind of know you more so even than I how things go or some of the difficulties in getting these things done. You went on to Panini, a different company, but in the hobby. Kind of like compare your that company to Upper Deck and your time there. Was it different than you thought? Was it even more similar than you thought? Like, how would you kind of compare your time there with your 10 years at Upper Deck?
Well, with Upper Deck, it was definitely a labor. I love the brand because it brought me back to the hobby. And in San Diego with Panini, it was interesting because I didn't leave Upper Deck because they lost basketball or because of the financial crisis back in 2009, 2010. I left Upper Deck because I was just burnt out. It's interesting living in California. It's because there's only one season in California. There is no spring, there is no summer, there is no fall, there is no winter. I mean, it goes from anywhere. And in San Diego, the weather, even as hot as it gets, it's very moderate in comparison to, let's say, the East Coast or even areas in Texas. And there is no falling of the leaves in autumn, which is even though for me as a child, I hated autumn because that meant going back to school, or I'm back in school. But that's the most beautiful time is always autumn because of the change of colors. And I know, John, you live in upstate New York, so you know exactly what I mean. And then in the winters, we don't have snow down here. In fact, we only get like 15 days of rain in California. And the first snowfall, and when I was in Canada, I was like, oh, man, I can't believe it's snowing. But you love the first time where you get that packing snow. We call it packing snow, and you do snow angels. You can build a snowman. It's so fun until you have to shovel a ice full of ice driveway or something like that.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Right? Yeah. So for me, even though I lived in California for 10 years, I did go back, I traveled quite a bit, going back to Toronto, maybe for a week or 2 weeks. It just felt like one long year. 10 years is one long year. At that time, I just figured I'd quit Upper Deck. And I want some time to myself and start traveling, whether it's around California, driving up the coast, driving on Pacific Coast. And then I went over to Asia I lived in Shanghai for about a year or so. and I really missed the hobby. So Panini was calling me a few times and said, "Hey, there's still opportunities." I said, "Yeah, why not? Let's just go back and see what I can do again." And when I left, a lot of the collectors and stores that I know were like, "Man, Karvin, you can't leave. You can't leave." I'm like, "Well, I'm leaving for myself, not because I don't love the hobby." Right? So at that point, it's like, you know what? Let's go back to the hobby and see what I can. Hopefully, I still have it. And the experience was definitely different. Texas is a lot more different than California. It's Dallas is a lot like Toronto, where it's like flat, and in California, and there's a lot of hills, and the people are very accommodating, but also very different from California. Though. So it was a new experience. I always loved the Dallas Cowboys. It's interesting. I love the Lakers and the Dodgers, and moving to San Diego, even though it's not exactly LA. And then I got a chance. I was like, you know what? So I love the Maple Leafs. I love the Cowboys. And I love the Lakers, obviously Raptors and Dodgers and Blue Jays. And I was like, well, I guess I do need to finish off the four teams and take a chance and live in Dallas. It was some tough times in Panini. So shaping that roster that they had for basketball and hockey at the time. But it was fun. It was also a challenge. So I like the challenges the hobby.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're gonna get into the Exquisite, a brand you deserve a lot of credit for. What we're talking about a time period here, Karvin, where obviously there was multiple licenses in the hobby. Cards, multiple sport can be produced by multiple companies. We know today that's not really, technically speaking, the case. As someone who grew up with companies making different sports, like we were familiar with back in the day, I mean, would you like to see that happen again, or not necessarily? If you had your druthers, would you want to see a Top/Fanatics, share that sort of what they have? Would you like to see Upper Deck again doing basketball and baseball and Panini, instead of where they're kind of being shut out, getting to create, multiple sport releases and product? Or do you like kind of where the hobby is going with sort of exclusive?
So with me, it's difficult because I worked with exclusives and I worked with non-exclusive. I see the advantage of both. I really do. I see that, the amount of marketing dollars a company spends. You look at Fanatics, how many marketing dollars to spend, bringing players and celebrities to the events. That's just one of the areas they have a huge marketing budget. And if you are splitting the license, then it's almost like, well, what are they going to contribute? Like, we're footing the majority of the bill, but yet, the collector has a choice of buying from other companies. And I see that. And I see that, even talking to the leagues, there's like, oh, there's battle between these two companies. If we let something happen here, then the other company gets all upset. I can see them having it all one contained. So for that reason, I can understand on the manufacturing side to have that advantage and have patience and build your innovations. But then also, I see companies that are not innovative and they rest on their laurels too much. And at that point, well, it's like, well, don't we need some new blood then? We need some innovations to just kind of spark up the hobby again, or even re-establishing the old brands that potentially that some companies may own, or even creating something exciting. Right? Not everything has to be exactly the same, and then we're finding a lot of stuff to be very stagnant today. I actually challenge some people. I say, you know what? There has to be some innovations. In our world today, there's so much going on, but trading cards yet haven't changed that much. Or we're doing stuff that what people all like previously, right? And it's like, well, how many times can you do that before everyone gets tired of it, right? So I challenge the card companies to be extremely more innovative. Now, innovation doesn't have to be just on the trading cards. It could, distribution, pricing. It could be, social media based. All these other ways of innovating. But at the end of the day, you got to have a reason why people want to stay in the hobby, right? If it starts to get boring and then it's all about, it's all about the dollars, then if the collectors leave, here's the one thing: if the collectors leave, there's no more money in the business, because they're the ones that are buying up all the nicer cars, the Grail cards, right?
Right. All the transactions occur.
Right. The collectors is the ultimate, should be the ultimate decision maker on everything. So if they like it, they're going to keep it. They're going to hold on to it. And there's definitely a lot of collectors that have a lot of money that can buy some of the Grail cards or buy sets. And also, we also want to establish the base brand that we can create new collectors that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they may end up growing to be teenagers, have a job, they may be dating, they may be more interested in a car than a cards. But then hopefully when they grow up to be in their 30s with their kids, they're like, hey, what about the cards I used to collect? Once again, this whole cycle happens again. And it's not just one time. We saw this in the 90s. Like there was, like in 90, I remember going to the National in 91. That was my first National. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. It's like Disneyland. And it was next to Disneyland, that National in Anaheim. And after that, it's like, man, the National just got smaller and smaller and a much more smaller crowd of people. And in fact, in 91, everyone was so happy. Everyone was like so excited. And then it seems like people got either older or they got more pissed off and people were more upset about the hobby than anything else throughout those tough years. And then all of a sudden, it happened again. Everyone's like, oh, trading cards has never been like this. I go, wait a second here. I'm telling you, it was like this in 1991. I turn around. There's like innovation here, innovation there. I had holograms. I had the ticket stubs with Ricky Henderson holograms on it, right? I had on one corner, I saw, Pele signing autographs for a company called Big T's from Vegas Big T's. Then we had like hockey legends signing at Smokies. Then I went to the Pro Set dinner with Roy Firestone entertaining as the host, right? And Muhammad Ali was walking out, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I got a chance to see Emmitt Smith, one of my Cowboys fan. I wanted to go up to him, and he was crowded, and I go, man, never thought I'd go to a Panini party. Just like in 2019 or 2022, Emmitt Smith is there, and I talked to Emmitt. I said, you know what? Since that day at the National in 91 in Anaheim, I've been wanting to come up to you. I saw you there. I didn't come up to you because you were crowded. I was a big fan of yours, watching you in Florida and then going to the Cowboys. Then on top of it, I see you walking down the hallways in Upper Deck. Being an employee there, I don't want to be a fanboy and come up to you and say, hey, Mr. Smith, I'm a big fan of yours. I couldn't do that. Same thing. And he was walking down the halls in Panini. I didn't do it. I go, but at this event, everyone can come up to you and say that. And now I'm going to come up and say that. So he managed to let me take a selfie and put a post on there. And I was thankful for that. So exactly. Things have come around. Like the hobby is repeating itself from 1991 junk wax era. And maybe we're now talking about the junk slab era now, right? So
and it's a great point, right? And that happens outside the hobby too. Things are cyclic and kind of come back around. From a collector, I agree with everything you said, Karvin. All right, that's going to wrap up the conversation, at least for this week, and really impressed with Karvin's recollection of his timeline in the hobby. Like, he's got a lot of stories, and when you have that much experience in stories, sometimes you can't remember everything, but he's got great recall and some great stories, right, about how things transpired and why we have some of the things we have today in the hobby. Here's the good news. If you enjoyed the conversation almost as much as me, we're not done. Part 2 next Friday. Next episode as well. So we have more with Karvin next week as well. So we're going to hear from our Hobbies to People announcer, some closing thoughts, and wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Yo, this is the card carver. Remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.